Yeah. For those of you that want to know what we're all
Welcome to a special edition of Clout941. I'm Ron Filipkowski, and when you're watching this on Monday night, I am on vacation. I am in Cooperstown, New York, right now as you watch this, living in a barracks with 15, 12-year-old baseball players who I happen to coach, and I'm not happy probably as we speak. I bought some nice big headphones to blast loud music, loud enough to drown out 15, 12-year-olds for the entire week. So we taped this show on Thursday of this week, and we have a great guest tonight. But as such, we have no Weasel since the week is not done. But we do have a great guest, and that's Jamie Miller. Jamie, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
And the reason why we invited Jamie is to sort of bookend our show we had last week with Rita Ferrandino. Rita is the chair of the Democratic Executive Committee, and Jamie is the vice chairman of the Republican Executive Committee, involved in a lot of Republican campaigns. Last week we talked about the 2010 races from the Democrat side, now the Republican side. Jamie, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background in politics?
Well, I first got involved in campaigns in 1994 as a volunteer, like many people who get involved. I went back to college when I was older, graduated in time to move to Sarasota for Jeb's campaign in '98, was the director, was field operations guy for the Republican Party here in '98, went to Tallahassee for the 2000 election, was director of field operations for the entire, basically the grassroots operation for the presidential race. Did that through the recount, which was
George W.
for
Bush.
George W. Bush.
Oh, that was the big
in 2000
Bush
in the
score.
recount.
Okay.
Absolutely. 2001, I started a little consulting business, Miller Strategies, which is kind of morphing into battlegroundflorida.com, and worked on and off with different candidates. Worked with Katherine Harris for a U.S. Senate run. Worked with Bill McCollum on his Attorney General, successful Attorney General's race. Currently here locally, I'm a political consultant and public relations consultant for corporate clients. I work with Ray Pilon, who's running for House District 69, and also Jeremiah Guccione, who's running for House District 67.
Okay. Now you became vice chairman of the Republican Executive Committee here in Sarasota County this year. What made you want to do that job?
Well, it comes back to the reason why I got involved with politics in the first place. When I first volunteered in '94, I got involved with the party in Sumter County, up near south of Ocala. A lot of people know either Bushnell, Florida, where the National Cemetery is,
right.
Veterans Cemetery.
Right.
I graduated from Wildwood High School, a few miles north. Bushnell is our arch rivals, and but I got involved with the party. I became the chairman of the county party there. So I kind of left volunteer politics for a while, while I was continuing to do my, build my career. When we moved back to Sarasota in 2005, I decided, well, I was going to take a break from politics for a little while. Joined a nonprofit called the Wellness Community, has a great mission, working with people who have cancer, who are affected by cancer. And then kind of the local political bug bit a little bit and started working on some issues here. Started working with a few campaigns here, and just decided that I would start my business again from here. But part of that, I wanted to make sure that there was a volunteer component, since that's the reason why I first got involved.
And that's why you're the
vice chairman, right? Okay. Long explanation to explain why.
I got it. Well, it's an unpaid position, and it's a lot of work. So we always ask people, why do you want to do it? And Rita gave a similar answer. Okay, so first, one of the things we asked Rita, and one of the things we want to ask you, is we have a lot of nonpartisan races in Florida. Some of the city commission races, the judicial races. You're involved in the Republican Party. What role do you think the party should play, either financially or grassroots or whatever, in nonpartisan races?
Well, first of all, to me, there's no such thing as a partisan race, a nonpartisan race. If it's on the ballot, it's partisan. You can see that from the actions of judges. You see that from the actions of city commissioners. So I believe they all should be partisan races. I think the one reason why you have lower turnout in those races, people don't know who they're voting for. They've never heard of them. They don't know what party they're affiliated with. They don't know what people stand for. So okay. I'm completely supportive.
So you think with the reason for the low turnout is because they are not?
Absolutely. That is regardless of city, judicial, what state you live in, what city you're voting in. you will always see lower turnout in nonpartisan races.
So let's take the Venice City Commission race, which is the next one coming up this fall. You have some Republican candidates running, and you have some Democrats that are running, but it's nonpartisan. Is the Republican Executive Committee in Sarasota County getting involved to help the Republicans in that race?
Well, I'm not speaking for the committee, but I believe that we will. We are going to start looking at endorsing candidates, I think, in nonpartisan races and in Republican primaries when it makes sense. I mean, when the committee has taken a definitive role on I think in races where you're either running against a Democrat incumbent and we just want to make sure we have one Republican running against that incumbent, or if there's a clear choice. If someone, oftentimes, this is kind of talking a little bit of inside baseball, but oftentimes someone will switch the Republican Party just a month or two before running because they realize they can't win as a Democrat. And so, obviously,
we want to expose
we want to
people.
make sure that as a party that people who are garnering the votes of the Republican electorate are actually voting, or they're voting for someone who has said they have some sort of belief system within the Republican Party.
Understood. Well, that would be a change if the Executive Committee endorsed nonpartisan candidates.
But it's not without precedent. There's probably 8 counties around the state who do endorse: Broward, Collier, Lee, Pinellas.
Okay.
So those are the ones right off the top of my head I can think of that endorse in local races.
Well, let's talk about some of the races coming up in 2010 because I want to get your perspective as a Republican campaign consultant. First, the governor race. First thing I want to ask is this. The Republican Party of Florida definitely sort of chased out or discouraged other people, like maybe Charles Bronson, from running in the primary against McCollum. Do you agree with that? Do you think it's a good idea to unify this early behind one candidate, or is it good to have a contested primary?
I think both.
Okay.
for a perfectly politically correct answer. I think that it's a tough economy, and there are it's going to be tough plowing on fundraising. And so, there's only so much money to go around, and I think, it's funny because people are talking about the Republicans clearing the field, and it's very apparent that the Democrats have gone behind a smoke-filled room and cleared the field. So,
well, it seems like the Democrats always have done that. It's just Republicans in Florida, I'm talking about, and locally, seem to always have contested primaries, and I think in some ways it's benefited Republicans because they get a lot of publicity during the primary season that the Democrats don't get. So I would be a little concerned about clearing the field.
Well, I think you can argue either way. You can either build up the war chest and save it for the end, or you can build up a big name ID lead and then try to hang on for dear life.
Right.
Unless you're going to raise the money, if you don't have a Democratic primary for governor, you're going to have a tough time competing for dollars in the last 60 days. You start looking at if you have a candidate who, let's be very conservative. Alex Sink has $18 million for the gubernatorial race. It could be double that. But
wow.
if you have a Republican primary,
she has raised that much already?
No, I said she could.
Oh, she could.
I said she could.
Oh.
I said, but I don't think that's out of the ordinary for her to have somewhere between $18 and $35 million to spend on the gubernatorial race. So if she spends, very little of that before the primary, and Bill McCollum, comes through the primary and he raises $25 million, but he spent $15 on the, on the primary. Now you have somebody sitting with $25–30 million against someone who has 10, and to make that type of ground up within 60 days is really tough. So if we really want to change, the change we need to seek is moving these primaries back to April or May.
Okay, when we come back from our first break, we will have more with Jamie Miller.